our guy, my hero, our leader, the man who creates more signs than anybody of all time, who is playing hurt today, joining us, and it will be, I believe, in studio tomorrow. Gregory P. Allen Braggs joining us now after our incident up in Milwaukee on Saturday. Gregory, thanks for making time for us here. How you feeling, brother?
I'm doing all right. I'm hanging in there. Can you guys hear me good?
We got you loud
Sound
and clear,
great.
buddy. You look fantastic, adorable as ever. Um, so here, let's just take us into the moment of what happened. The Cubs won. It was a miracle. You're heading down. You guys took a picture. 5-3 winner. Everybody thought that Hector Neris was going to blow it. He didn't. And then go from there.
Yeah, we were, making our way out. We actually saw a viewer of the show. His name is escaping me right now, but he came over and said hi to us. So I ran over and gave him a couple stickers and thanked him for tuning in. And so then I went to go find Nick and Jake as we were heading towards the escalator. And so then I was just kind of giving some Brewers fans some crap. We were chanting "Let's go Bears," and it was good-hearted, conversation. And so we start to go down the escalator, and everybody's kind of trading some jokes towards the Bears Packers rivalry. And then all of a sudden, the whole escalator shook and made a noise. And it's very similar to like when you're on an elevator and it shakes just for a second and kind of scares you. I think everybody's had that moment where you're like, oh. And then 2 seconds later, it became a free fall. And like before you know it, now you're calculating how fast you're going down this slope. It was just a surreal moment.
So hold on. Did it go down a level or like
No. Yeah, that's the misconception from some people. When we're saying a free fall, the stairs didn't drop out or anything. It essentially came off the gears and became a roller coaster heading downhill. If you ever were on the shockwave at Six Flags, it's like hitting the peak and then the big drop. That's what it became. And so everybody at the bottom of the escalator is starting to trip and fall over each other, which turned into a big pile of people. And as more people are coming down this out of control roller coaster, the speed of the escalator was picking up, because when it first released and let loose, so to speak, it was slightly fast, but then as we started to get to the bottom, it was going really fast. Like you were bracing for impact. And for me, there was an old lady right in front of me, an elderly lady who was very similar to like my mom's size and age, and she was grabbing both sides of the escalator, kind of bracing, and I could feel her fear. I was scared myself, trying to calculate what I'm about to do. And so then my instinct just kind of kicked in to put my arms underneath her arms. And my thought was, instead of completely running her over once we hit the bottom, because I'm watching everybody like dominoes fall over each other, that I would just try to lift her a little bit as we hit the bottom. So and this is all in a split second. So I'm just like, all right, when we hit the bottom, I'm going to lift her a little bit. Honestly, I kind of wanted to push her over the pile, but I mean, that attempt was kind of silly to even think I could do. We essentially both fell into the pile, and then I fell over her, and then as I turned around to put my arm out, I got ran over by the next people. And it was just like I said, a complete domino effect. And that's when, a couple guys went through my knee, a couple people landed on Nick, and as it ended and the final people kind of fell into the pile, that's when the screams let out. And that for me was probably the most nauseating part of the entire thing, because once your adrenaline kind of slowed down for a second, and now you're realizing what just happened, and you're hearing people screaming. And Luke Stuckmeyer shared a picture. There's blood everywhere, there's people everywhere. It was a very traumatic experience. It was just one of those things where you're like, wow, I can't believe that just happened.
Yeah, and Brett, like when it first jolted, I don't know, maybe I've seen like too many social media posts like on like escalators for some reason, but I thought it was about to bottom out where people kind of get sucked into the escalator. I don't know if anyone's ever seen that. So I was on the railing. I was going to jump off. Like I was like, this
you
is
were
not
literally straddling it.
I jumped on one side of the escalator and I'm like, well, this is not how I'm going.
Right.
Fuck that. I'm sorry. Like I'm about to jump off, but by the time I'm like thinking about that, you're already going down. And then like you said, Greg, you're on the ground. Then people constantly keep getting piled on top of you. So
you were on like the black part of it, scooting on down.
Yes. Yep.
And
so Luke is the one that saw you doing that. So that was actually a pretty athletic move on your behalf. That thought crossed my mind, but on each side of the escalator, because like most escalators, you have a down one and you have an up one, and then there's like a median, like a platform. But this is just a down escalator, so there's nothing on each side. So if you were to try to go over the side, you would just fall down to the next level. So there was really nowhere to go, and so it was just just an insane moment. But credit to you, Nick. No surprise, you made the most athletic move there.
Well, I ended up in the same exact place everyone else did, on the ground with people on top, because by the time I was thinking, like, am I actually going to jump this? I was already towards the bottom, and like the pile was already piling up, and then people were on the back of my legs. And, I end up getting like someone grabs my arms, is like pulling me from the bottom. But yeah, it was.
Well, and then of course,
crazy.
I mean, there was two elderly ladies, at least by my count. There was probably a few more, but two that I was completely aware of. And they probably got it the worst of anybody. One in particular that was at the very bottom of the pile, and she had blood all over. She had, hair caught in the tracks, at least it seemed like it. And our whole concern, and Luke brought this up too, like everybody kind of stopped what they were doing to try to pull this pile off, because we wanted to help the people at the very bottom. And honestly, we all thought, I think most of us thought somebody had died. And so once we got to the bottom, and luckily, I think the overall sentiment, as unlucky and awful of an experience as it was, we were all very lucky that it wasn't worse, whether it was the people on it or, in general. It was just, we all kind of lucked out to a degree. And so I'm just like, there's a lot of emotions that we have after experiencing that. But my overall, because I'm always try to look on the bright side of things, like I'm just very grateful that none of us got hurt worse. Nobody died. Nobody was paralyzed. I didn't get hurt worse. Like, yeah, I'm dealing with injury, but it could have been much worse. And, there's so many other things, like my family, my mom. Normally I talk my mom into coming to all these events. Anybody that's ever come to our draft parties or our tailgates, you've seen my mom. She comes to a lot of this stuff. And for the first time in the whole CHGO, my time here, I talked her out of coming because it was going to be such a long day. And I just knew it would be a long day for her. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful my wife and my daughter weren't there. I'm grateful that Hogue was with us with his son, James. He left an inning before that. I'm grateful for that James wasn't caught in this and Hogue wasn't caught in this. So there's it was a crazy experience. We're a sports media company. All of us that watch this show, we go to a lot of sporting events. So I do think it's important to kind of talk about what happened, because we all take escalators down, from stadiums. The United Center does a good job of kind of, monitoring how many people are on at a time, and they kind of cut you off. Okay, let these people go down, and then the next people go down. And I think all stadiums should consider that as part of their process. And it's easy for us, like Nick said earlier, to take those simple things like riding an escalator for granted. But we all, as patrons and people that run the stadiums, I think we all have to think about this stuff, because even if it's a moment that's few and far between, it's machines. Things are bound to break. It's going to happen again, but there's things we can do to try to avoid situations like that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Greg, I know, like, in your tweet yesterday, like, taking escalators, will you think twice about it?
Yeah, 100%. There's no question. Will I never take an escalator again? I don't know. I wouldn't go that far at this point, but there's no question. Every time I get in an escalator the rest of my life, I will think about that moment. I think that's just natural instinct. When we get on the elevators at our office, anybody that's ever rode it with me knows I get a little nervous. at the end of the night, if I'm by myself, when I ride the elevator down, or when I leave the office, I won't ride the elevator down because it makes me nervous. If something were to happen and nobody's there, and I think those are natural, human instincts. And so now that this malfunction happened, yeah, that those vibes only up the ante in terms of that. So, it's something, and I will never, and I'm not a escalator expert, so I don't know the exact source of this problem. There's probably, multitude of issues that cause this, but at the same time, I will never get on an escalator that is that packed again, ever. It's just common sense, like, to me, even if somebody comes out later and says that wasn't the direct source of the problem.
Were you able, last detail here, were you able to stay on one stair going down? Is that how you did it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah,
okay.
The stairs, stayed level. So
Yeah.
like you're just like riding this thing like a scooter going downhill or something, so yeah, I think some people did kind of fall under, and trip a little bit, but yeah, like I said, it was crazy. We were all there, just having fun, and it was kind of a bizarre thing, but I'm grateful for all. I mean, it's just something that, obviously we all hope never happens again, but I'm just grateful that it wasn't worse, and we'll move on. I'm looking forward to training camp and everything else. My life's not going to end, and it's like, this is my first experience. I mean, like 99.5% of everybody has been very supportive and, empathetic, but it is kind of interesting to watch, the cynics and some of the people, like, acting like, victim shaming almost. So it's like you kind of experience a little bit of that, where people are trying to see through. But I can promise you, man, it was a pretty traumatic experience, and something I will never want to have to go through again. But, you also realize that anything can happen. And I came home and I hugged my daughter pretty tight that night. And you can think that that's dramatic or not, but you know what? I mean, I'm not going to take, everybody knows I live my life to the fullest, but, it just kind of goes to show you that you got to take every minute you have for, and treasure them,